Hey guys, we are the Let's Talk 20s podcast. I am your host, Tanner.
I'm one of the co-hosts, Connor.
And I'm your other co-host, GT.
Guys, this podcast is centered around common themes that people in their 20s may be going through, whether it's anxiety, depression, other mental health things, relationships, and so much more. It's all about things that we're all going through together. We may think we're going through it individually, but the point of this podcast is bringing light to things that we're all going through together.
We can't wait for you guys to hear about our thoughts with this. We upload weekly episodes every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. sharp, so please tune into that if you'd like to hear the episodes. We also all come together every week for a different topic, and we each share our perspective on that 3 times a week, so please look forward to those as well.
And you guys can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts at Let's Talk 20s Podcast. We look forward to seeing you guys soon.
And with that being said, please enjoy this episode. So for this week, gentlemen, talking about society pressure, which I know we've talked about in previous weeks. We kind of talked about pressure, intrinsic versus society and everything, but today we are specifically talking about society pressure and how society pressure can really impact us on a day-to-day basis, especially us with social media, all the things we've talked about previously. But I know that we're going to kind of dive into new avenues within this topic tonight, so I think we should hop on straight into it. GT, you have the first question for this evening.
I do, yeah. And this was something that I really wanted to talk about because we all see it and we all experience it. Is there a sense of pressure when our peers, they could be a couple years into their career, and then the next person in our peers doesn't have their life or their job figured out? Is there pressure within that? Peers having kids, buying houses. Is there a sense of having to catch up or keep up?
It's a yes and no for me, actually, so I'm curious what y'all think about this. So I definitely think it's yes because of how the path to success was defined when we were in school and when we were talking about our future and stuff with our parents. It was always go get your license, then get a car, and then go to college, and then find love, like settle down, marry, have kids, find a perfect career, like all that stuff. It was like that path that they laid out. And especially in school, because you're in high school, you're getting ready to go to college, and then when you're in college, then you have to follow things a certain way based on your major, and if you don't, you're not going to be successful, get an internship. There's all these societal things that are set up for us to where it's like, this is how you are successful. So yes, I do think that there's a sense of pressure, and because they talk to us about it so much for so long, it's just that underlying sense of pressure that we put in ourselves. But I will say one thing that our generation is pretty cool about is that I feel like this isn't as big of a deal. I think that there's more conversation about it, and I think that there is still an issue with it, but I think that one thing our generation is good with is being more accepting of people who maybe don't have their stuff together as much as they used to, because it's so hard to be on your own now because it's so expensive and there's so many other factors that maybe previous generations didn't have to deal with. So I think there is a level of understanding that current generations have with each other where there's not as much sense of pressure between each other with our peers. I still think it is there, though, overall. Absolutely.
I think you'd be lying if you said there wasn't any pressure. But
yeah,
I think it's all about your perspective and realizing that if you're just focusing on yourself and your significant other and those that are close to you, not really worrying about society as a whole and how you see online and social media and all that shit about where people are in their life. I think if you just worry about yourself and stay focused on your own little bubble and trying to constantly improve yourself, things will come over time. And I think if you just accept that it's going to come as it is, and it's not going to maybe go at the pace that you would like it to, but as long as you're trying to constantly improve yourself and you are making that small progress, you are improving yourself. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how big the progress is, as long as you're making these small adjustments and constantly improving yourself, you're on the right track. So I think that, at least for me, is what's alleviating a lot of the pressure I had in the past, because right now with school, yes, I have 3 more years of school, but I know I'm constantly improving myself and getting one day closer to that goal to then graduate and then have that job and all that when people are already at that stage. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's my take anyways.
God, I'm glad I asked this, but at the same time, because that's exactly, I think, how I would have gone about it, but that's me being honest and that's me being true to myself is yes, there absolutely is pressure. And I think there's pressure that society puts on people and that it's all about how you let it affect you at the end of the day. Like Tanner said, it's basically how are you going to let that pressure affect you? Are you going to let it make or break you? And are you going to let that control how you feel about your own stuff and how you go about your own things? So, because I don't want to just regurgitate the same thing, but I can't agree more.
I know we're talking about the sense of pressure, and we've all kind of touched a little bit on where that comes from. My original question I wanted to ask you guys was, what is the one consistent source of pressure that our generation deals with more so? But I don't even really need to ask that because it's a very obvious answer that it's social media. So instead want to ask, why has social media made societal pressure more intense for our generation? I know I touched on why I think our generation is a little more accepting, but I do think that this part of it has actually made it more pressured for us. So why do you guys think that? I know we've talked about this. Sorry, go
Because
ahead.
people see the different things that could be happening, they're like, oh, okay, well, if these people can do it, I can do the same thing. And when
Mm-hmm.
people might not have learned the same things they did, also because everyone just wants to get up on each other. Everyone wants to be better.
I think my answer is different than yours, but I see where you're coming from. I think it's because now we have the ability to be more public about what others can see. And I think that obviously you're going to post the highlights and the good parts of what's going on in your life on your social media, right? You're not going to post the bad on there. And I don't want to say it's that people lie more now. I think a good word choice would be deceitful. I think people are more deceitful about what's going on in their life because I think there is an additional pressure to, well, everyone else seems to be doing well, aka this is what I'm seeing on their social media, so I have to pretend like my life is also okay and I'm going to only post it good on social media. So I think there's a lot more kind of trickery in terms of people pretending like their life in general is so much more put together, and society has really taken social media instead of just as a small insignificant portion about how people are actually doing their lives, and we really have maximized the importance or value of what we see on social media. And I think that is what has made it a little more difficult for, in terms of societal pressure, to achieve XYZ at a certain time. I think that's kind of why our age group struggles a little bit more with that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that.
Both y'all said it well. I can't really add on much more. I would definitely say that it's just the amount of access that we have to seeing other perspectives than ours is a huge reason. We're all so connected in a way that we've never been connected before, and we have so many more resources to pursue. I think that's another thing too. It's kind of like choice paralysis, where there's also, because of the internet and just in general how you can market yourself with social media now, there's kind of a choice paralysis where technically the world is your oyster and technically all this stuff could theoretically happen if you go do this, then this, and this, and this. But it's almost kind of overwhelming seeing what you want to do next because there's so much more stimuli for you to like sort through as a person. At the end of the day, there's this line of success, there's this avenue of success. Oh, this person's doing this kind of similar to me, I can do that. It's just, yeah, there's comparison, but it's like a paralysis of what you're even supposed to do. There's so many reasons why societal pressure has gotten worse because of it. It really should have gotten better, but that's just not what happened, unfortunately. It's kind of sad, and there's just so many unhealthy methods that have been developed with people because of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think social media is a great example of an unhealthy method of people dealing with societal pressure. You want to maybe take your mind off of what's going on in front of you, so then you get on that phone and you start scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and try to get your mind off of the present. Well, then next thing you know, you're looking at other people's profiles and they're posting their highlights, so then maybe you compare yourself to that and feel a little worse about yourself. And it's a vicious cycle, Connor, as you previously mentioned, and that's an excellent example of one of those unhealthy habits. But I want to ask you, gentlemen, what maybe is a different unhealthy habit of dealing with societal or intrinsic pressure that you want to tell others to avoid?
Don't even start comparing because your life is not the same because y'all are not named the exact same name. Y'all are not born into the exact same family. So do not even compare for a second. why you should already be past someone when that's not your life, that's their life. With whatever it may have been, stop. Don't even go down that rabbit hole. It's not worth your time, your effort, your emotions. It's not.
I agree. I mean, that's an excellent example, GT.
Yeah.
Connor, what about yourself, man?
Oh, yeah. Well said, GT. Yeah, that was gonna be my answer. I like that. I think there's kind of a societal pressure nowadays to feel like you have to express yourself a certain way if you have certain viewpoints, and you have to be super committed to every version of an idea if you and I'm referring to politics, of course. I think there's a huge societal pressure to when you have a label or you have some kind of like viewpoint and it's really easy to label, and then you feel like you have to go with that entire version of a label. And so there's just like a lot of middle central point of views that are just lost in the conversation because it's extremes arguing with extremes. I think it's important to try to understand as many perspectives as you can, but I don't think that extremes should define who you are as a person. Don't feel like the way you define your values, your morals, how you view the world, or anything needs to be validated by people that you think are similar to you. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own walk, just like GT said. So it's a little similar to what GT said, but just don't let the extremes define who you are as a person. There's not enough middle point of views these days. There's not enough understanding and empathy with what's going on with a lot of this stuff. It's sad.
Fantastic as well. I think mine would be distraction, and something that I've had to control myself in the past is obviously it's good to have certain releases or certain hobbies or interests that kind of can maybe take you away. For me, it's video games, right? So video games is one of the few things that can really turn my mind off, and I can just focus on what's in front of me and not have to deal with everything else that's going on. If this hobby of yours, whatever it is, scrolling on social media, is distracting you from what you need to get done, or is distracting you from what your life should be, then that's when you know you're just simply avoiding what's happening in front of you, and that intrinsic pressure is starting to affect your day to day. And that's when you really need to evaluate what is affecting your day to day, why you feel like you have all this pressure, and what can you do yourself to actually change that. I think there's a difference between having a slight distraction and release versus it consuming your life and you trying to constantly distract yourself from the pressure and from what's going on in front of you, because that's not the proper way to live. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's me speaking from experience. Sometimes I feel like I hide from things because I'm afraid to face them head on, and that can only happen for a certain period of time before yet again that problem is still there and you have done nothing about it. I think that's an unhealthy habit that I would share, that I advise people to maybe be cautious of. Are you just taking a break, or are you trying to distract yourself from what's truly going on? And if that's the case, then you need to reevaluate that and try to figure that out.
Well said, Tanner. I definitely agree with you that distraction, I mean, that's definitely something that I have a really tough time to deal with as well. I wanted to ask you guys, all of these things are because pressure adds a lot to our lives. It can make us feel a lot of different ways. Like one thing that I always feel whenever I have a lot of pressure that's going on in my life is I feel guilt that I'm not delivering on what I'm feeling pressured about. If I have something to do at work and I didn't deliver, and I'm putting pressure on myself because I didn't deliver, then I feel guilt. One thing that I'm trying to do is to be a little easier on myself and to be more forgiving with the day-to-day, that life is just going to sometimes not going to go the way that I planned. And that's one way that I've helped my future self minimize the pressure. And it's just kind of constant maintenance and constant positive affirmation. So how are you going to help your future self with minimizing the pressure that you feel now? What are some ways that you guys do this for yourself, and some advice y'all can offer?
Shout out Tanner. Right off, distract myself from that pressure. Don't even let that pressure get put on my back. Distract myself from it and just keep it pushing.
Nice.
I think, how am I going to help my future self with minimizing the pressure I feel right now? I think it's just taking the small steps to deal with what I can on a day-to-day basis. I feel like as long as I'm able to put my head on my pillow at night and be satisfied with what I accomplished and at least attempted to do during that day, and I keep doing that, almost, if not every single day, then whatever pressure I feel now should eventually alleviate. I mean, there's always going to be some kind of societal or intrinsic pressure that we put upon ourselves, right? Unfortunately, with just the way things are, or at least how I'm wired specifically, I tend to be a little harder on myself, so I always have some form of pressure upon myself. But if I can minimize that by trying my hardest every day and telling myself that I did try my best every single day, I think that's all I can do and can control, and I think that's the only way I can really truly help my future self.
I think it's also, there was one thing, there's a video that I saw, and it relates to this. It's a guy was asking how to like help yourself with your future self from where you are. And he talked about write all the things that are on your mind, and then circle the ones or highlight the ones that you can control, and erase or X out all the ones you can't control, and focus on those that you can control, and only make the best of those.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
was crazy.
that's it. It's so simple,
That's
but
all.
like,
You know what that reminds me of, GT, real quick, is that reminds me of, there is another piece of advice that I heard that was kind of similar to that, but it was in a different way where, yeah, like only focus on what you can control. It was some actor or something. I don't remember who he was, but he was talking about how to be kinder to your future self. And one of the first things he said was focus on what you can control. But the other thing that he talked about was view your future self as a person, like somebody that you actually like could interact with and have an impact on. So how is this decision, and how is what I'm going to do in this situation impact future Connor? Is future Connor going to be in a better place because of what's going on with this action or this situation? And if it's not going to, and you view it like you're screwing one of your close friends or family or your significant other over, it like shifts your mindset to where you're actually viewing yourself more authentically and more fairly, so where you're not putting as much pressure, because a lot of times we put more pressure on ourselves than we put on other people. I'm not saying everybody does that. Some people do the opposite, of course, but for me, I put more pressure on myself. So if I view myself as somebody that I can put pressure on, I'm less likely to do it, at least for me, because I know for you guys who are some of my closest friends, my significant other, it makes it to where like I would never put that much pressure on them, or not intentionally put that much pressure on them. So maybe I'm unintentionally putting pressure on myself in a way that I didn't mean to. It's a weird mindset trick, but I really liked it when I heard it.
I like that. I like that advice for sure. I was 10 episode, as we typically do with something like this. I want to ask you guys, how can people transform the pressure they feel from within themselves and society into a positive source of motivation and discipline? So, Connor, I think what you just mentioned, and GT's as well, kind of is extremely applicable to that question. How can people minimize what they feel now?
Like I said, I'm going to stick firm to what I said. All the things that are on your mind that you're worried about, write them down. Circle the ones you can control. Eliminate the ones you can't control. That's what you need to focus on. And go at it with the most optimistic mindset and with a can-do, will-do attitude. And I promise you, you're going to like the results that come out of it. It might not be the best results you ever get, but guess what? You keep plugging and chugging away at that, it's going to get better and better and better. And you're going to love that better version of you, how relieved you're going to feel, and just the zen that you come to.
I agree completely. Connor.
I think it has to do with some advice that your dad actually gave us, Tanner, and something that I've been trying to do a little bit more. And we kind of talked about it in a couple of our weekly wisdoms. The pressure that you feel from yourself and in society is going to manifest in a way where it's probably going to manifest in some kind of negative compliment or negative connotation that you have for yourself, right? And I think what you can do is you can turn those negative thoughts, those negative actions that you take, maybe because of that pressure, you feel like you just got to act because you're not doing something right, for example, and you can turn it into a lesson that you learned, some kind of mistake that you're like, oh wow, I made that mistake. I understand why I made that mistake. Let me learn from it. Or some kind of positive thing that you learned at the end of the day, so you can have a little victory for yourself. I think if you can learn to shift your mindset into okay, yes, I have this pressure, and maybe understanding it and then shift it into a whole kind of thing where you're maybe being grateful for like the opportunity to be challenged or something like that, or you're grateful for the fact that you were able to learn from that mistake if you reacted to societal pressure in a certain way. I think if you can find a daily way to be positive for some kind of impact that this has had on you by maybe shifting your mindset on just one thing a day, I think that'll start to shift your mindset into maybe not putting as much pressure on yourself.
I think it's really cool when one or all three of us admit that things that we've said ourselves, or our co-host, or even a guest has said that we're trying to implement in our own daily life. I think that's really special.
Oh
And
yeah.
I completely agree with that as well, Connor. I think it is something that really pressure and how to alleviate that from yourself is an ever changing thing. The way that we react to stresses in a way that we will kind of react and deflect pressure is going to evolve over time as we experience different things that either broke us or we were resilient through. Regardless, it's going to be a lesson. And really the only thing I can add is, like I said, if you're trying every single day and you know that you're giving it your all and you're able to put your head at night and your mind isn't racing about you should have done this and this and that, like if you're able to kind of lay down your head at night and not have those kind of thoughts, which I know is very hard because I like to replay the day myself, and
Yep.
there's always at least one thing that I think about, like, oh fuck, I should have done this differently, and
Yep.
realize that you tried your best. And if you truly believe that in your heart that you're trying your best and you're putting your best foot forward every single day, I think that that is better than most people at that point. And you just need to take everything with a grain of salt and realize this too shall pass. And whether you overcome it now, tomorrow, next week, or a year from now, you can accomplish and overcome anything that is in front of you. All around, I think fantastic answers talking about society pressure. Is this the only time we're going to be talking about this? Absolutely not. I know this is going to
No.
be a recurring topic, and it melts into other discussions we have. I think this is a fantastic episode. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys tuning in, watching yet another episode of the Let's Talk 20s podcast. GT, where can they find us at?
You can find us on Spotify, find us on YouTube, find us on Apple Podcasts. Find us, baby. Hey, come listen.
Come listen. Come on now. Yeah, we're streaming all those platforms and our Instagram page, Let's Talk 20s podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in and watching to all of our weekly wisdoms and everything else that we upload to the Instagram as well. But guys, love yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. You're doing a fantastic job, whether you think it or not. I promise you are. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And as always, guys, until the next one, peace.